Hey, Gamecock fans, Happy New Year to you. JC Shurburtt here with you, Chief Sports South Carolina YouTube page, like we've been doing throughout the holiday break. And I am joined today to give you a Citrus Bowl preview with the late night Gamecock himself, Matt Anderson. Hope all of you are doing well. Of course, the Gamecocks play the Fighting Illini of Illinois in the Citrus Bowl tomorrow, December 31st. Orlando, Florida. It's a 3 p.m. Eastern kickoff on ABC. Both teams are 9-3, looking for that 10th win on the season. Brett Bielema and Shane Beamer both have had resurgent years. I would say, Matt, after both went 5-7 last year and missed a bowl game. Both teams are back and have pretty good seasons.
Yeah, it was funny, JC, yesterday. You saw the picture that was floating around of Belima and Shane at I guess it was whatever, like a little bowl ceremony thing where they just had both coaches there beside the trophy. And one of my buddies texted me and said, it looks like Illinois had bring your son to work day. Just the difference in size and stature of those two guys and just age as well. But yeah, happy for Brett. I think he's a really good coach. I think he kind of got a tough draw when he was at Arkansas, and you see Arkansas still struggle under Sam Pittman for a number of years. But both teams, as you said, are on the upswing. I know that the Gamecocks have floated between a 9 and a 10-point favorite. Right before we hopped on, I saw that they were back up to a 10-point favorite. So some folks are betting on the Gamecocks in some way, shape, or form. And the over-under at 47.5. To me, JC, those numbers, the over-under seems right. I don't know about the line, but I'm sure we'll talk about that here a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. At 40, I saw it at 49 too for a while. To me, 47.5 and 49 are two different things with this. I'm thinking the score 31 to 20, 29, 20. Sometimes Beamer's teams have weird scores because, especially in a bowl game situation, he'll flat out throw out a fake 2 point, extra point, whatever. He'll straight up do that. I mean, I think they've had some sort of trick play on special teams in every bowl game that he's coached in at South Carolina. And so sometimes the scores get a little cattywampus. It's not like we're not used to seeing 29 or 19 or whatever, but that's kind of been a trend of his, since he's been the head coach of the Gamecocks. But yeah, it's a pretty good Illinois team. I'm a little uncomfortable from a Gamecock standpoint in just the sense that, and it's probably because this program has never had too many moments like this where they're going into the biggest bowl game that you can be in now as a decided favorite and expecting to go in there and win pretty big. I mean, even that game with Nebraska and the game with Wisconsin and the game with Michigan in those bowls during the 11-win Spurrier era, that 3-year period. You didn't go into the game going, hey, well, Carolina's going to roll these dudes. And South Carolina, I don't think was a double-digit favorite in any of them. So, it's a little concerning because Illinois is a good football team, Matt. And I'll say this, having watched Indiana up close on the big screen at home against Notre Dame, and then having watched Illinois all year, I started thinking about this today. Illinois' offensive line makes Indiana's offensive line look like a JV squad. I mean, they are big and athletic and physical, 320 across the board. I mean, that Carolina's defensive line has to be careful tomorrow, but just looking at that kind of reinforces my opinion that Indiana had no business being in the playoff. They were just a function of schedule, and they're a good team, not a great team, and playoff teams need to be, I think, at least potentially great. I wish Illinois had played Indiana this year because I don't think the Hoosiers would have got. I mean, I think Illinois would have beaten them by like a drum. But that's what kind of team Carolina's facing in the trenches. And I'll ask you this: I think when you look at their running backs, that they have the kid that's from Enterprise, Alabama, that's 6'1", 235 that starts. And then kind of a 5'11", 200-pound kid from Illinois that backs him up that's actually averaging more yards per carry. They are missing a freak. He's had season-ending hip surgery in October. Caden Fagan, who is like a Brandon Jacobs type. He's a guy that those of you that just watch college football, look out for him. I mean, 6'3", 245, downhill runner. And once he kind of, I think, gets going, He's going to be good. You probably didn't want to have to tackle him on Tuesday, but he's out. So there's that. But I expect them to kind of try to use some outside zone schematically. They're more similar to Missouri than just, I think, any other team on the Gamecock schedule. That's what Barry Lunny. He's very multiple. He's almost a tricky play caller with the passing game too. It's not just ground and pound like we're used to from Brett Bielema, and I think the numbers back that up, Matt.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues for the Gamecocks is going to be Illinois' RPO scheme because if you get caught in quicksand as a defender, they can make you pay in a hurry. Um, so keep an eye on that. Yeah, I mean, Caden Fagan kid was averaging 4.5 yards per carry before his injury. Since then, it's been Josh McCray and Aiden Lowry, 185 carries, close to 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns. Something they've picked up where Fegan left off. And, don't forget their quarterback. Their quarterback can run the ball as well. He's not, I wouldn't categorize him as a dual threat guy, JC, but I would say that, he's kind of like a Steven Garcia. He'll get the extra yards. He'll put his head down. He'll go after it. And you got to be cognizant of that. But that RPO is where I think with Kyle Kennard, opting out of the bowl, going to focus on the NFL draft, just you're going to have some young players in there that are playing pivotal positions on the edge and setting the edge and making sure you're in the right position. But I mean, I do trust the Gamecock linebackers in that scheme. So we'll see. I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about just, as we talk about this game, JC, in Big Ten play, Illinois averaged 9 offensive possessions per game, and they scored either a touchdown or a field goal on 44% of them. That's a really good and efficient number. And when you look at the Gamecocks in SEC play averaged 12 offensive possessions per game, and they scored 37% of the time, either a touchdown or a field goal. So is this game going to be more in the 9 possessions that Illinois is accustomed to, or are you going to get up to 12 and 11 possessions? And the Gamecocks, I mean, look, this is a scary game, and it's not, I don't say that trying to blow smoke, but this is a Gamecock team that's very confident right now. And this is an Illinois team that has read all the press clippings, and they're going, like your analogy of Missouri, I think is great, JC. Missouri, the Gamecocks had dead to right at the end of the first half, and Missouri just came back and never went away. But Pat Bryant's out for Illinois. How does that impact them? That's 37% of their passing yards on the season. But the Franklin kid is pretty good as well, and he put up monster numbers. Was it UTSA?
Yeah. Zachary Franklin has 4,000 career receiving yards. 4,000.
And you know what, JC? He was a bigger receiving contributor against Oregon and Penn State than Bryant was.
Yeah.
Now, why that happened, I don't know. Maybe they just sold out to stop Bryant, but I mean, the Franklin kid is very talented, and the Gamecocks. I mean, this would probably be one of the better defensive backfields that Illinois is going to play all season. But you're going to have to make sure that you don't let him beat you, and you don't forget about these other guys. That bowl games are all about proving yourself for the coaching staff for the next year. So these kids that haven't got the opportunity are going to be hungry on Illinois' wide receiver core, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, JC, what's your take on Pat Bryant being out? Can Franklin? I mean, obviously he's got 4,000 yards; he can carry the load. But if you're Clayton White, are you scheming it up to kind of isolate, double team Franklin? Are you trying to always have someone over him and just make the other guys prove it?
I don't know. I mean, I do think Franklin's a good player. He's certainly not put up the numbers in the SEC and the Big Ten that he did in Conference USA. I mean, SEC, he kind of was. I remember when he got out of the portal and went to Ole Miss, everybody was like, "Good Lord, he's going to be really good." And he kind of got there, didn't work out. He redshirted like some guys do after 4 games, and then went to Illinois. 51 catches this year, 613 yards. Very explosive player. And Luke Altmaier, who was at Ole Miss too. Luke Altmaier, their quarterback's from Starkville, Mississippi. A lot of people don't know that. Went to Ole Miss, played some for Lane Kiffin, and then transferred out so he could go be a starter. They weren't there together, but they both kind of came from Ole Miss. And they have a lot of good chemistry. I don't know. I think with Franklin, you probably try not to have to double him or bracket him or anything because, you're talking about an offense where you do have an RPO game where you're going to have to stop the run to get them off the field. You mentioned the shorter, lower number of possessions. That is the part of this offense that still is very much ground and pound. Illinois will try to not let you. They'll play keep away, in other
Yeah,
words, because they're not the best defense. I mean, they're good at takeaways. I think the stat is 1.5 turnovers per game on average. They do turn it over, and there have been games when Altmaier has been off and not the most accurate passer. So, I think if you're Carolina, you got to watch the outside zone because you struggled with it in a couple of games this year. You got to watch the outside zone. You can't let the backs get set Altmaier up to where you're in a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, and you got the whole playbook, or a 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3. They'll churn out first downs, and the next thing you know, um, they're right in the football game, and you're frustrated, and it takes on a whole different um, level of wow at that point. I think, especially with it being the last game of the year, South Carolina's been pretty resilient, especially Missouri and Clemson. Those were different types of wins than Oklahoma, A&M, and Vandy, and that Carolina kind of faced adversity and had to pull it out. So but that was the offense did their part and the defense did their part, obviously against Clemson, forcing a turnover late. This defense has been leaky at times, in different ways, and so if you're going to stop them, I think early downs are very, very important. They do have a big offensive line that will get a push. Um, it's no different than Alabama's or LSU's, Oklahoma's, whoever Carolina's faced. Did I say Oklahoma? I did not mean to
yeah,
say Oklahoma. My bad. That was a bad offensive line. Alabama, A&M, obviously LSU, Ole Miss. Those teams all have. Clemson has a better offensive line than people give them credit for. They're no different than those guys, but they can play ball. I mean, this is the Big Ten is a good line of scrimmage league, especially on offense. So I think it's important for the defense for Carolina to get off the field, to force third. And, you start forcing Luke Altmaier into 3rd and 8s, 3rds and 9s.
yeah.
It's going to be really difficult because, Dylan Stewart, they're probably going to try to account for him and chip him. But whoever's on that other edge, whether that's Gear or Brian Thomas or Gilbert Edmond, who's back healthy, even TJ Sanders and Taka Hemingway up the middle. I mean, you pick your poison when you try to double and triple team a guy on the edge because your inside guys can get a push. Now you got to watch Luke Altmaier from running the football. Obviously, he will squirt out there. He's got, I think, 220 yards rushing net this year, but he's lost 194 in sacks.
Yeah.
So that's 400 if we're playing by NFL rules. Lenore Sellers obviously would have like 800, but that's
But not lately, not lately
yeah.
for Lenore's.
Oh no, the
Um,
sacks, yeah, the sacks kind of went away, obviously, and he's done a good job of avoiding several of those. So, I just think that I think that that's a key, though. You can't let them. You got to frustrate them on early downs. Get them in the 3rd and more than 7. I think, and with the idea of getting them off the field and getting some momentum with a sack or a big play.
well, on 3rd down too, they're not afraid to run a halfback draw and kind of a delayed draw where it kind of sucks the defense in, and it's almost like a quarterback running up the middle. Illinois does that, and they also love to just leak that tight end out, like you've seen Josh Simon do so many times this year. Just leak out slowly, get about 5-6 yards downfield, an easy pitch and catch for the quarterback to the tight end, and that's how they kill you with 1,000 paper cuts, because that's how it's 9 possession game. So the Gamecocks have to watch that. On offense, JC, for the Gamecocks going against Illinois' defense, they got to look out for Gabe Jacques. He has 8 sacks on the year. Illinois has 29 sacks on the season, 55 tackles for loss. So Gamecocks need a constant eye on him. You did talk about the takeaways. They have a couple guys that have multiple interceptions on the season. And, they have one guy, Xavier Scott, with 4 interceptions. Torrey Cox has 3. And then Miles Scott has 2. So Lenore's has to do what he's been doing a better job of, is taking care of the football. You don't need a fumble. You don't need the interceptions, because if the Gamecocks play a clean game, I think that they will come out victorious, and it might be close to that 10-point spread that we're seeing. But the Gamecocks haven't played a turnover-free game in a while.
Absolutely, and you absolutely and like against Clemson, the Gamecocks were very fortunate. I mean, they turned it over three times in Clemson territory. You can't do that against Illinois. And I think this too. You got a
Well,
running back.
really, you can't do it against Clemson. You just
Well, you
you just had a
shouldn't.
guy
Yeah,
turn
I mean, you
his
shouldn't. I
Superman
mean, you're
cape
very
on.
fortunate. You can't do that and expect to win most games. However, and Illinois knows they're an underdog, and Illinois has played. Gosh, I guess the two teams that are like this that they've played, where they're in Oregon. That game got away from them. The Penn State game in Happy Valley, though, was very competitive on a semi-cool night. Illinois defense played pretty well passing game wise against Drew Aller. Penn State ran the ball well, though, 229 rushing yards in that one. And South Carolina, I think on the ground, has a chance to kind of loosen them up. And then obviously that opens things down the field. I would imagine that. Of course, I think there's always the thing, the philosophy that they could sell out to stop the run and sell out to stop sellers in the backs and say, beat us throwing the ball. Some teams have tried to do that this year. And I think at that point, it's up to Lenore Sellers and Jared Brown and Josh Simon and Nick Harbor and Michael Smith and Vandrevius J. Whoever. Pick your person, Delvon Campbell, who's playing against his former team, to make them pay. And that's what you do in football. I mean, if it was just as easy as stacking the box, every team in the country would stack the box. And but if they come into the game and say, all right, we're going to corral Sellers, not let him beat us with his leg. He's going to have to stay in the pocket and beat us with his arms. Now, Clemson tried to do that. Clemson sent the house and sold out to stop the run, kind of like the Brent Venables, Westcott, and Lenore Sellers ran past them. Clemson's much faster on defense, by the way, than Illinois. So South Carolina does have a speed advantage in this game. This offensive line, though, you got three guys playing in their final game: Kamar Bell, Torricelli Sigmans, and Vershawn Lee. No excuse not to go out and have your best game. And I'll say this, though, that Illinois plays a 3-4 multiple defense. They'll start through four linebackers, like it's a true 3-4 with a nose. Dennis Briggs Jr., who was at Florida State for almost 10 years, I say that in jest, is their starting nose tackle. He's a handful. I mean, he's playing his better football than he ever played at FSU. So if you're Vershawn Lee, Torricelli, I mean, you got to make sure you neutralize him. That's the whole key to be able to run the football against a 3-4. A lot of people think, well, only three down linemen, you should be able to run it. Yes, but it's not that easy. Because if you can't handle the big guy in the middle, then you got a bunch of linebackers that are eating at that second level. And you got to be careful with that, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think, Rocket opting out as well. You had Kennard and Rocket Sanders opting out of this game. We all understand why. Whether you agree with it, you disagree with it, there's a reason and the rationale. And look, for Rocket especially, running backs don't get paid in the NFL. And if your best chance is to be healthy as young as you can possibly be, and that's an injustice by the NFL, not an injustice on college football. But, I am interested to see how the running backs catch the ball out of the backfield for the Gamecocks, because that was a key component of the offense under Dowell Loggins. Now, what is Mike Shuley going to do? We'll find out tomorrow. I don't think that's going to change that much. You really can't just change things in 3 weeks. You're not going to see a brand new offense, but I think Oscar Attaway has decent hands. We know Juju can catch the ball. Maybe we don't see Juju trying to run up the middle into that nose tackle. That would be a good thing to not do. Hopefully they don't do that. But, Juju, I would like to see him get some opportunities. But, Howell and Fuller are really good players that just really haven't had an opportunity this year, because you have a guy like Rocket Sanders and Oscar Attaway, an older guy, can pick up things and has been around the block. We'll see if there's a component of the running backs catching the ball. I think that is a security valve for Lenore Sellers sometimes, when the entire secondary is running back with Nicholas Harbor and Mazio Bennett and all these guys that are pretty quick for the Gamecocks, Jared Brown. And then all of a sudden, hey, there's someone wide open, whether it's a tight end, Josh Simon, or it's Rocket Sanders. What are they going to do? But yeah, JC. I mean, I think if the offensive line gets that push, the running backs. I mean, Oscar Attaway's has shown a lot of wiggle and a lot of tough runs here lately, especially against Clemson. But if you can get those linebackers to take a bad angle and you can get outside and let your offensive lineman, give a little pull and get an offensive lineman in front of you in the running game, that's where the speed of the Gamecocks can take over, and you can see some big long runs potentially happen. I think Howell has a chance to have a pretty big game, bigger than most casual Gamecock fans that probably aren't watching this show right now realize. They're going to be really surprised when they see Howell perform on tomorrow. But
And
yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry.
I just don't think you want to put the ball in harm's way through the air. You want to take the safe stuff. You don't want to give those playmaking defensive backs an opportunity to nab one, but you still got to be aggressive. And yeah, I don't think the solution tomorrow is Lenore Sellers running for 167 yards again. I don't think that's how you want to win the game when Illinois wants to make it a 9-possession game. I don't know, JC, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't either. And I'll tell you this, if you do if Illinois does, and look, Aaron Henry, it's kind of funny. I covered Aaron Henry as a recruit. I think he's from Immokalee, Florida, maybe Pahokee, somewhere in South Florida. He was a corner that went to Wisconsin, played up there, was a really good player. Of course, I covered Travian Robertson and Sterling Lucas as recruits too, so I'm getting old. However, he's one of the up and coming defensive coordinators. He does a really good job. Like I said, they haven't been probably as good as maybe some Illinois defenses we've seen under Bielema before, but they're good. My question for them would be, okay, if you do want to sell out to kind of corral sellers, how are you going to stop Josh Simon? I mean, to me, if I'm Illinois, he and Mike, maybe Michael Smith too, are matchup nightmares because
That's where one
they're
of
not really
those four
fast.
linebackers have to be on him. I mean, you
Yeah.
almost take a linebacker out of play with Josh Simon.
Yeah. And so that's my thing there. I mean, I like their linebackers. I think they're getting better. They've certainly recruited pretty well at that position. They'll be solid. I mean, this is the school Dick Butkus went to, right? But so they're usually pretty Simeon Rice, who was a D lineman, but Illinois they should be good at linebacker. They're just not. I just don't know who's going to run with Simon. If I'm them. And if I'm Mike Shula, probably know that, and so that would be something that I think could be a nice counter for the Gamecocks if they decide to sell out and take things away. They may not. They may just say up and say, all right, we're going to play straight up. We're going to play our defense and beat us, if you can beat us. But, I
I
think
think that's what they're going to do, JC. I think they're going to play bend, don't break, keep everything in front of you.
yeah,
I don't think and they only average, I mean, I say only, but they only average 7 tackles behind the line of scrimmage, whether it be a tackle for loss or sack on the season. So it's not like they're super aggressive. I mean, they're just not. So I mean, they'll take their shots, but for me, the big thing is when you look at the Illinois defense and the defense that they run, if they're keeping everything in front of them, the Gamecocks cannot get away from throwing over the middle. And at the start of this season, it was almost like Dow was like, look, I'm not comfortable with it. Lenoris wasn't comfortable with it. He was second guessing it, but you're going to have to attack the middle of the field somewhere to get the outside lanes open, to get the Josh Simons and the Nick Harbor deep shot. And, this is a game for me, JC. I'm sending Nick Harbor deep every single play and just taking somebody with him, taking 2 people with him, taking a safety with him. You got to do something, and you just throw. And football can be simple. You take a DB and you take a safety with Nick Harbor, and then Josh Simons there 6 yards past the line of scrimmage on the same side of the field. I mean, there's simple things that you can do, but I think the Gamecocks will take a lot of shots in this game, but they cannot ignore the middle of the field. And I just can't remember Mike Shula that much. I don't know what he did. It's been so long, and the game's changed so much, but I don't know his tendencies. But at the same time, neither does Illinois.
now Aaron Henry doesn't know his tendencies either. But I would guess. I mean, Henry did say in the press conference he went back and watched some Panthers with Cam Newton and some Alabama for back in the day. But like you said, it's changed a whole lot since Shula was dialing them up at Alabama. And then in the pros, you call things a lot different. Your script is a lot different. The
Hash
defenses are a
marks are
lot
different.
different. The hash
Everything's
marks are
different.
different. It's a lot different thing. I agree about throwing it over the middle. South Carolina this season is play like the keep it in front of you defenses they've played. Vanderbilt has won, successful there to a certain extent. Kentucky was one, successful there. Ole Miss was one, not successful.
Hmm.
Alabama obviously almost blitzes too much these days. Oklahoma's aggressive, Clemson's aggressive. Missouri, I think Missouri's idea coming into that game was to keep everything in front of them and not let him run because Carolina had a hard time running the ball even with Rocket that day. But there was Pat wide open, Pat in the second. There were guys running wide open the whole time in that
Hmm.
football game. And so, yeah, I mean, if you want to do that, pick your poison, in my opinion. So we'll see. And I don't know, it's a 3-4, so it's a little different type of scheme. But if you're talking about Mike Shula coaching in the NFL all those years, there's a lot of teams that run 3-4. So he
Well, the
probably
three
knows
four,
how to be.
there should be some soft spots.
Yeah,
They're going to have to zone up. There should be some soft spots, and Dale Von Campbell has shown a knack for running that kind of crossing route, kind of yeah. Gosh, I'm blanking on the tree diagram, but anyway,
yeah,
the levels type of play. You're
yeah.
going over and you're going across the middle, and Lenore's has excellent touch and anticipation when he throws that ball. It's very rare that when a ball is thrown, 20 yards and in, that it's not on the numbers of an open receiver or even a covered receiver. So wide receivers are going to have to make plays. We all know what Josh Simon can do. JC, the special teams here. I don't know if the Gamecocks are going to feel comfortable. I mean, Shane is one of the guys, especially in a bowl game. I don't see him trotting out Alex Herrera for a 45-yard plus field goal very often. I mean, if it's 4th and 8 and it's a 45-yard field goal, he might just pooch punt it. He might punt it. He might run a fake. He might just send the offense out there. I think the 40 yards and in is where the Gamecocks want to be on special teams. Kai Kroger, holy crap, he's kind of found his mojo again after
Yeah.
being in kind of a funk last year. Their kicker is a first-year kicker. Is in second year in the program. David Alano for Illinois, 35 of 36 on extra points and 17 of 20 on field goals. And their punter is averaging 40.8 yards per punt. So, I mean, if this is a field position game, the Gamecocks are going to have to string together some of those 75-plus yard drives that they've had numerous times this season. But, can the South – now talking about the South Carolina defense and Illinois' offense, JC, if we talk about special teams and field position, and we all know Big Ten football, run, 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 punt, field position, run, 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 punt, field position, and then you take your chances. But, this Gamecock defense against the Illinois offense, obviously no Kyle Kennard. Everyone else is playing. Gamecock defense has been salty this year. And Kyle Kennard should be sending a new car or something to Dylan Stewart when he gets his first NFL paycheck, because the attention that Dylan Stewart took allowed Kyle Kennard to have he was going to have a great year regardless. But I mean, to win that National Defensive Player of the Year, I mean, you almost need to have like honorary mention there for Dylan Stewart.
Absolutely. Everybody like saw Dylan Stewart beat a triple team like Kentucky game that was on national TV. And they were like, well, that guy's a problem. And he is still. As big and as good as I think Illinois' offensive line is, I mean, even if they chip him or try to, I mean, Dylan's going to get his. When you hear about can you impact the pass, can you affect the passer, can you impact the game at that position? Then that's what you're doing. It's not always about numbers and production and sacks and stuff like that, because I mean it's mission impossible sometimes. And sometimes Dylan gets pressure and forces an errant throw. I mean, he was on Cade Klubnik pretty good there when he threw the pick. I'll say this too about when we talked about Luke Altmaier, the Illinois quarterback. He reminds me of Cade a little bit. They're kind of similar players. Kind of he can run, more of a passer, probably has not been as accurate this year as Cade has at Clemson, and certainly doesn't have like the multiple weapons Cade does now that Brian is out. But he does have weapons, and he's good at running the offense, and he's got a good play caller behind him. I think for South Carolina's defense, there's so many guys that are playing their last game at South Carolina that are really good players that know how to bring it. Is just keep your intensity, man, and play your assignments. Don't go out there. I tell you, the problem I could see with this game and some other bowl games that I've seen through the years, not necessarily with South Carolina, but everybody, is when you go into a bowl game and your expectation is not to go win and play your best, is to blow somebody out, and all this talk about proving a point as you're out of the playoff. That can sometimes work against a team because they're sitting there just, if they're not up 21 nothing within the first 5 minutes, which never happens, it's like, what's wrong? And then, so you almost try to like dominate, and then that's when you make mistakes mentally, and that's when the other team's relaxed and they're like, well, we're in it, so we're going to punch you in the mouth, and that's when bad things tend to happen. I think Shane Beamer deserves the benefit of the doubt with this, though, because he's been a good leader this year. There really haven't been, with the leadership on this team, letdowns, things of that nature. But I will say this, Lou Holtz, I'll say this right now, man, I'm going to tell you this right now. This team has a habit sometimes this year in games. It has had a habit of, for whatever reason, blowing leads. Now, it hasn't always cost them. Cost them against LSU, but we know there's other factors that went into that. I still think that team, after blowing a 17-0 lead against LSU, I mean, they fought like hell the rest of the game and should have won it, right? But if you think through it, Alabama, they come back, they score 19 unanswered. They got all the momentum. They got the ball. There's a turnover up, and then Alabama comes back. Lost the lead there. Even Oklahoma, you're up 32-3, lackluster second half, 35-9. A&M, Carolina's up, what, 17-6?
Yeah.
Or sorry, 14-0 to 17-6. Right before the first half's over, A&M's taking the lead with another touchdown. 2017. Of course, Carolina rallies and comes back. Vandy, they scored 14-0 to start the second half. Vandy comes right back and has their only touchdown. And then I don't even need to mention Missouri. You're up 21-6. You end up blowing the lead twice in the fourth quarter, and then, got saved. Now, Clemson's another type of game. They were behind that whole game. So I don't think it's something that's a trend with this team. It's just something that's happened some. And I've watched enough Illinois, Matt, to know they don't ever think they're out of games. They fell behind against Nebraska. They won the Rutgers game on a miracle, right?
Yeah.
The only game I've really seen them, kind of just screw around, for lack of a better term. Oregon, they really struggled with the Oregon speed, and it was out there and all that. They were in it with Penn State. The Minnesota game. Minnesota came in. Minnesota's 7-5 football team. But Minnesota's a lot like most Big Ten teams in that they're going to just punch you in the mouth all day and play field position. And they're kind of Minnesota's kind of like Kentucky used to be in that they're a spider web team. Illinois got caught in the spider web. I watched that whole game. Very frustrating day for the Illini, because they probably are a better team than Minnesota. But these guys don't give up. I mean, South Carolina gets up 21-3, something like that in the first half. You better not just lay down, because they're not going to lay down. They're going to keep playing, and that's one of the good things about the Illinois team and this team both. So I think they'll be fine. I think the Gamecocks will be fine and show up and play inspired football. But because it's a bowl game, I think a lot of people are nervous.
Yeah, and one of the things that I will say when you talk about Drew Altmaier, and you talk about the two games on the schedule that are most similar to South Carolina. And I say most similar because South Carolina was in the college football playoff conversation. Every national person said this. So you look at Penn State and you look at Oregon. In those two games, Altmaier completed 33 of his 60 passes for 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and averaged 173 yards per game. If South Carolina does that tomorrow, I think they win this game pretty comfortably, in my opinion, JC. That's the recipe, I think, and we'll see if they can get it done. I think that going into the game, South Carolina is the favorite and should be the favorite. I don't think you disagree with that, JC. you do have two of your top five players not playing in the bowl game, but your overall roster has more talent than Illinois does.
Yeah, I think so.
You're
Speed and
starting
athleticism
22.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and
So
look, there's no way to spin a consensus All American being out and the comeback player of the year, one of several in the only three in the country. Rocket, I know his stats don't say it, but it's between he and Dylan Sampson for the best back in the SEC this year, I think. So there's no
yeah.
way to spin those guys being out. It's going to hurt, but can you compensate? Do you have enough to win the football game? Is my question. All right, so let's get down. Let's wrap this up and get some predictions. I've said all week 29-20. I'm going to say that tomorrow on the tailgate show. Uh, so that's why I said that 47 over under is like a different than the 49. So I think 29-20, and the Gamecocks go out and win 10 games this year. But I don't think it's one they can just show up and expect to win.
That's funny you say 29-20 because I'm 28-20. I don't think Gamecocks attempt a field goal. I think that they score 4 touchdowns. I think Illinois will get a touchdown in the second half to make it. I think it'll be 28-13 at some point in the fourth quarter, and I think the final score is 28-20. JC, real quick, I know you're probably going to talk about this with Phil, so we don't have to go into granular detail. I'm just going to tell you who I'm taking in the playoff games. I'm taking Boise State over Penn State.
Ooh.
I'm taking Texas over Arizona State. I'm taking Ohio State over Oregon, and I'm taking Notre Dame over Georgia.
I'm going Ohio State, Georgia, Penn State, and Texas.
Yeah.
Although, Scatterboo, man. Scatterboo. Texas could lose that game. I mean, they've got a lot more talent than Arizona State, but Scatterboo, man.
Yeah, the two teams I'm pulling for are Boise State and Arizona State. I'd love to
Yeah.
see those two guys, one of those guys, get to the national championship and have a chance to win.
Yeah, but yeah, well, of course, you're a March Madness guy. You love the
Yep.
underdog. I don't. I think Boise is a travesty that they even got to buy. But
Hey, they gave Oregon maybe their best game of the season outside Ohio State.
Week 2, man, come on, week 2. But
When Dylan Gabriel
I think we're
sucked.
gonna find out. Hey, if Ohio State plays like Ohio State played against Tennessee, nobody's beating them, dude.
No.
I mean, nobody's beating them. I mean, it's just one of those things. All right, well, cool. Well, Matt, we certainly it's just me. I certainly appreciate you joining me today. Matt Anderson, Late Night Gamecock Show, thebigspur.com, obviously a contributor on Inside the Gamecocks, the show as a co-host. We'll all be back on regular schedule next week. But until then, I hope if you're traveling to Orlando, you enjoy yourself. Have a good, safe time. And once again, we'll have the tailgate show tomorrow morning. And then the Gamecocks will end what's been, win or lose, a really good season, Matt. So appreciate you being here with me today.
Yep. Thank you. Talk to you soon, JC.